Welcome to this session of Q Talks. Q Talks are a series of informative and topical webinars run by leading experts from quality compliance systems. I'm David Constantine, Chief Technical Officer and Data Protection Officer for Quality Compliance Systems. We've created a series of webinars dedicated to simplifying the complexities of the General Data Protection Regulation and to help you ensure your organisation is GDPR compliant. This is the next in the series covering what do I need to do? If you don't already have a good idea of the personal data you have, it's advisable to conduct an audit. You might find that you hold a lot of personal data you don't need, in which case you should destroy or delete that information. We have provided a template, initial privacy impact assessment policy, procedure and form that will help you carry out an audit. Personal data has a much wider definition under GDPR than under the Data Protection Act. At a high level, it is information about an individual. This includes the obvious identifiers such as first name, last name, email address, postal address and phone numbers. But it might include opinions that you write down about a person. It now includes geolocation data. For example, when Uber tracks your location to send you a taxi to the right place, or Find a Friend app on iPhones, and biometric data such as fingerprints. Don't forget as well, there are specific requirements about special categories of data, which are known as sensitive personal data under the Data Protection Act. Most organisations in the health and care sector process a significant amount of special categories of data, which include information such as medical and health records, care plans, religious and political views, ethnic origin and sexual orientation. You may need to involve other people at your organisation to make sure you've thought about all the different types of personal data you process. As well as personal data related to service users, you need to think about HR data that you process about your employees and personal data of any other individuals you work with, such as suppliers or professional contacts. GDPR covers a wide range of areas and impacts across an organisation. It's not possible to summarise everything you need to do to meet the requirements of GDPR in this webinar, but there are some key principles that you will need to make sure you comply with. First, you must process personal data lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner. This means that you must make sure that you are entitled to process data under GDPR, for example, because you've obtained consent from the data subject, because it is in your legitimate interest to do so, because you need to process the personal data to fulfill a contract, or because you are processing special categories of data in order to provide health or social care or treatment. These are just a few examples, and you should make sure you understand all the relevant grounds on which you are able to process personal data. You also need to give the data subject certain information when you collect personal data from them, indicating what data you're collecting and why you're going to use it. Personal data should only be collected for specific purposes and processed only for that purpose. If you want to process data for another reason, you'll need to make sure you can rely on another ground for that purpose. For example, consent or legitimate interest. In addition, the processing you carry out should be adequate, relevant, and limited to what's necessary. You're also required to keep personal data up to date. You should keep personal data for no longer than is necessary for the purposes for which you collected it. This requires each organisation to determine retention periods for the personal data it processes. You are also required to ensure appropriate security of the personal data. Finally, GDPR requires you to carry out privacy by design. It means you should think about data protection and GDPR issues from the beginning of a project rather than as an afterthought. All decisions you make in relation to data protection and GDPR should be documented, along with the rationale behind those decisions. First, you need to make sure you have a solid understanding of GDPR. There is a lot of information available on the internet, and a number of training sessions and seminars are being provided by various businesses. I will explain in the next webinar the ways in which QCS will help you achieve compliance. You'll need to understand the principles of GDPR so you can work out whether you are already compliant. If you don't comply with GDPR in a number of areas, think about which of those areas are most likely to arise and which issues could cause problems from the perspective of the ICO taking action. For example, if you know you receive a number of subject access requests, but you don't have a process in place for complying with them, you might want to focus on that as a priority. if your personal data is currently unsecured, you might want to prioritise putting new policies and systems in place as soon as possible to ensure that it is kept appropriately secure and protected by the 25th of May 2018. If your organisation regularly breaches data protection laws, think about the cause of those breaches and how you can prevent or reduce the number of breaches happening. The ICO has made it clear that non-compliance on the 25th of May 2018 is non-compliance full stop. It is likely, however, many businesses will take a risk-based approach and will focus on key areas of concern before the 25th of May 2018 and will follow a rolling programme after that date to achieve compliance in all areas. So there you have it, a quick summary of what do I need to do. Thank you for listening.